dice roll the right way, they could be winning it all in June. So my hope and resolution is that LeBron gets ring number 4.
Yeah, I think the big challenge for the Lakers, and we're going to start seeing this, what are they going to do with the minutes on this team? It's, I just mentioned, you look at a team like the Raptors, they started playing their guys a lot of minutes, and I'm not saying there's any causality here, but some guys went down with injuries. They were playing an awful lot of minutes, and you start to wonder with this Lakers team, how much is too much? So LeBron and Davis are both playing 35 minutes a game. At what point, if you're Frank Vogel, are you going to start giving them a few more nights off? You're going to give them some quarters off. And how does that impact the wins and losses? Because, Jason, there are only 3 players on the Los Angeles Lakers who are averaging double-digit points. And that is Davis, James, and Kuzma. And Kuzma has been very underwhelming. And you really have to wonder, when one of those guys doesn't play, how is this team going to fare? And I think that's a big concern if you're looking forward as a Lakers fan and you're thinking this is a championship team, is that they could fall down the standings, I think, quite a bit if one of those guys or both of them start missing time, because they just don't have the depth, as we talked about. They've been phenomenal on defense, but I think they rely so much on those two guys that it's asking a lot, and I think that's going to be something we really have to watch as the season progresses, particularly on offense, where they just really don't have anyone else who's a creator for them.
Yeah, I thought Quinn Cook would be that guy, but not really so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let me get to my fourth one, and this is one of my favorite guys to watch. I got to watch him last week when I was in Miami. Bam Adebayo has been incredible. I think you could make the case that he's one of the top 2 or 3 centers in the league right now with what he does on both ends of the floor. And I think he's going to make an All-NBA team. I think it'll probably be the 3rd team, but I think he's been that good that he deserves it. He has been absolutely the key to the Miami Heat defense, which has been pretty darn good. And on offense, he's often a hub. He is 2nd in the league for centers in the number of assists per game behind Nikola Jokic. And he is an absolutely dynamite rebounder as well. So I just think his all-around contribution to a team that's been way above expectations should be rewarded in that end-of-season kind of award circuit. So I'm looking forward to seeing Bam Adebayo make one of those All-NBA teams if he keeps it up.
You love Bam Adebayo so much that I'm starting to like him. You know, I'm so upset because I'm going to Miami next week for a bachelor party, and the Heat are in New York and Brooklyn the weekend I'm in Miami. So the games will be on, which are great, but I would have loved to have gone to American Airlines Arena to see them play in person. I mean, how is that arena? It's nice.
It's great. It's actually a great basketball arena because it's not too big, so you can see the court pretty well. It's not as good as the one in Indianapolis. Has the best, in my opinion, the best basketball arena in the country. But Miami's pretty good. You get pretty decent seats. It's not too expensive, and the fans are actually pretty good. Plus, those Miami, the Vice Wave jerseys are the best jerseys in the league. Those blue jerseys with the pink tint are incredible.
Yeah, they are nice. So, I mean, listen, Bam Adebayo, though, does have a shot because a lot of the big men in the NBA this season aren't really playing up to the hype. I mean, you have Anthony Davis, you have Karl-Anthony Towns, you have Joel Embiid, but if the voters go a certain way, Bam could make the All-NBA 3rd team or at least an All-NBA defensive team. But I think we're both in agreement. Kid's going to be an all-star this year.
Yeah, he deserves it. He's been great. But with that, Jason, what's your fourth resolution of this coming year?
Oh, the Homa Nets fan is coming out to play again. Okay, so this is my hope. This is my biggest hope. Kevin Durant comes back healthy from his torn Achilles and that the Nets are in the championship conversation next year. We do Nets news every single week. I always, talk about how this year is house money for me. Next year, I'm going to be hanging on every dribble because you'll have Kyrie, you'll have Karras, you'll have KD with the supporting cast, with the way Spencer Dinwiddie's played, with the combination of Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan at the 5. I hope that next year a healthy Durant will lead the Nets into the championship conversation because I think that next year will be the first year the Nets are actually title contenders. This year, if they make the playoffs, great. Losing the first round, I don't care because next year I am all in. So get well, 7. We need you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for the Nets that you've got to be really encouraged by is that I've always viewed Kyrie Irving as a little bit more of a ceiling raiser than a floor raiser, if that makes any sense. In that he's a guy who you can bring into a team that's really good and he can make you elite. But he can struggle at times at making a good team get to very good or a bad team get to pretty good because he has some obvious deficiencies and quite frankly I think a fair criticism of Kyrie has been that he doesn't really have the ability to create offense for other guys the same way some of the other superstars in the league can. But as an isolation player, he is absolutely elite. And we saw that next to LeBron. And we've seen that in other situations. When he's allowed to do his own thing, he's elite. And when Kevin Durant comes back, he becomes instantly one of the single best second bananas in the entire league. And that's a scary thought because now that kind of defense that you're playing on him, where you say, I'm going to put my best defender on Kyrie and just let him shoot it, like he can go ISO, I'm going to try and stay at home with all the other guys. You can't do that anymore because that guy's now guarding Durant. And now you're going to have a guy like Kyrie spotting up sometimes around Durant, running pick and roll with Durant. And I think that, to your point, absolutely will put them in the championship conversation because I mean, those two are going to be an unstoppable duo, and their skill set, especially on offense, just meshes so well. They're both elite level shooters. They're guys who can run the 4-1 pick and roll or the 1-4 pick and roll. So as long as Kyrie buys in, I think that's going to be a heck of a team next year, Jason. Um,
And you can't really speculate about whether Kyrie wants to be second banana or not because the two are best friends and they decided to join the Nets together. So you could put that notion to bed real quick. So that's my hope. Whatever happens this year with the Nets happens. I'm going to my first game of the season this Saturday against the Raptors. So I'll tell Pascal Siakam you said hello. I know you guys are good friends. So why don't you give us your fifth and final New Year's resolution for 2020?
so I'm going to kind of stick to my picks at the beginning of the season, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, but my resolution is that the Sixers and Clippers meet in the finals. That's what I said at the start of the season. It's the way I feel now. Watching these teams play, I just feel like they both have an extra gear that the other teams in the league just haven't shown to me. I see a team like Milwaukee who's been absolutely great, and no offense to the Bucks fans because they're a great team, but I still have questions about the depth and if Chris Middleton can really be the guy for them. And on the other side, I look at this Clippers team and I see the talent between George and Kawhi, and I think that that's going to be really tough, especially when those two lock in and their minutes tick up. Because I think one of the biggest storylines that maybe even getting underreported is that when you look at those two teams, one thing that they share is that they're not playing their best players as many minutes as some of these other teams. You look at a guy like Joel Embiid, he's only playing 30 minutes a game, Jason, and he has not played in a bunch of games already. They're not pushing him the way they have in past seasons. His minutes are down. Al Horford, 30 minutes a game. They're not playing their best players at the same level. The only guys who are really getting a ton of run are Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. And to me, what that means is come playoff time, those guys are going to all be playing 35, 36 minutes. You look at the Clippers, same story. When they get to the playoffs, there's not going to be load management for Kawhi anymore. You're going to get to see Kawhi Leonard play 38 minutes a game. You're going to see Paul George playing 38 minutes a game. Lou Williams is going to play 35. Montrezl Harrell is going to play as many minutes as they need him to. And all of a sudden, some of those guys who are just fine for these teams are not going to be seeing any minutes. And I think that's really going to be huge. And for me, that's why I think these two teams are on a collision course for the finals as of right now.
Yeah, well, let's see if your prediction rings true. Just, I guess, 6 months from now. Crazy how time flies. So, my fifth and final resolution is that Zion Williamson gets healthy and proves that he's worth the hype. He was expected back around Christmas. You saw the Pelicans play on Christmas Day and beat the Denver Nuggets without him. You saw Zion getting some work in on the court. I just hope he comes back healthy and proves that he's worth the hype, because the Pelicans were my pick for a young upstart playoff team in the West, and they have gotten off to a really bad start, but they've won 4 in a row. And as crowded as the Western Conference playoff picture looks, Ben, we're not even at the halfway mark yet, and the Pelicans are just 3 games out of the playoffs. So they're starting to play well. Brandon Ingram looks great. Josh Hart looks great off the bench. You mentioned Drew Holiday as a trade target. I think that they're going to hang on to him and see what he does with the guy like Zion. I don't think they're ready to mail it in quite yet, but I'm interested to see if the Pels can keep this up, partially to prove myself right since I'm terrible with predictions, and partially because it's good for the city. I really hope New Orleans can put a good product on the floor consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Zion is such a fascinating case, and I mean, I just wonder though, Jason, do you feel like this team might let him sit out so that they can get a better draft pick?
I don't think so, because they didn't tank and they had the whole Anthony Davis saga, and then good karma brought them the number 1 pick. And they were able to kind of make some moves, trade with the Hawks, and they have a nice young team. So I don't know if this is really the year to tank. I don't think JJ Redick's going to let them, in all honesty. So no.
Yeah, I know JJ Redick was not pleased that he might not make the playoffs, although to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked if JJ Redick is on the move because he's the one guy on this team who just doesn't fit with the timeline. And even when you look at the lineups, I mean, Lonzo Ball had a hell of a game the other night. And when you look at this team suddenly, Jason, you start to say, who's the guy who doesn't quite fit? And it's JJ Redick, quite frankly. I mean, I still wonder how they're gonna do with the team that they kind of have, because you look at Ball, you look at Ingram, these aren't really elite shooters, and that's Zion's probably biggest weakness at this stage of his career, is that he's not a great shooter. So when he comes back, you have to wonder. And then the same thing with Jackson Hayes, obviously, who's had some moments. How does he fit in? He's not much of a shooter. So it is interesting to see. I kind of agree with you. I think that they should probably hold on, and I cannot wait to see Zion come back, because I mean, he's just an electrifying player, and it'll be really great to have him in the league.
I mean, we're judging this based off of 4 preseason games, but he really stuffed the stat sheet there. So let's see if the Pels can turn things around. Now, do the Bulls make you feel blissful or bullish this week? I know you're currently typing. Should we skip it? You know what, Ben? Peek behind the curtain. No, we should not. I'm fine with skipping the Nets. Hopefully Karis LeVert comes back. Injuries are piling up, and I already mentioned I'm going to the game. So give us a little on the Bulls, and then we'll get out of here on some marquee matchups.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that there's been some bright spots. As much as this has been a frustrating year for Bulls fans, I think there's a lot of bright spots. You look at Kobe White, you look at Daniel Gafford, and you look at some of the other guys they've had. There's been some really nice moments, and I think that there's a bright future on the way. I think one of the most interesting things for the rest of the season will be what happens with Chris Dunn. He is at the top of the league in terms of steals per 36 minutes. He has been an unbelievable defensive player. The advanced metrics absolutely love this guy. And yet, on this team, there's not a place for him, quite frankly. Um, Jim Boylan has really struggled with how to use him. To be honest, they have played him a lot, basically at small forward, and it's going to be really interesting because a contender might see Dunn as a Marcus Smart or Pat Beverly type player who can really do some damage. He's more of a guy who gets steals. He forces a lot of turnovers more so than playing positional defense, but he's really good against smaller guards, and I'm pretty interested to see if another team who's contending might be interested in a Chris Dunn as kind of that defensive stopper on the perimeter. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm not sure. There hasn't been much buzz yet, but that'll be kind of an interesting subplot for the Bulls. But overall, I'd say it's a green right now, Jason. I'm okay with where we're at.
I'm happy with that. That makes me happy because usually you're very bullish, and I don't like ending the show on that note. So we are going to tee off a couple marquee matchups since we're doing a show next week. We will keep it to 3. But starting with tomorrow night, New Year's Eve, don't have plans, don't want to pay $75 for an open bar. Cozy up and watch the Houston Rockets at the Denver Nuggets. 2 of the better teams in the West, 2 of the more teams that are kind of how do I say this, but they're put together